Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel Let's Talk Boxing. They have called up Mr. Ian John Lewis to give an explanation for his scorecard regarding Taylor and Catterall. Now, initially, they said they were happy with the card that he gave, whereas now they're calling him up and they've relegated him from an A-star class official to an A-class official. Now, I am not against this particular thing, generally speaking, because I have been for the idea of a promotional and relegation type system for judges. Only if it goes beyond the realms of subjectivity, though. I've got no problem if a judge sees things differently to the general public, as long as he's able to explain why he got there and he has a consistent method of scoring a fight, and he does that consistently through the rounds. If there is an inconsistency, though, and there is no possible way to explain why he does what he does, then there does need to be a consequence. So I'm not against that. I'm not even against the idea of this flip-flopping. A lot of people say, oh, it's flip-flopping. It shows a sign of weakness. They were initially happy and now they're not. You know, you get this in politics as well. A minister will come up with a policy, the public will be outraged, the minister will backtrack, and the press will say, oh, look at this flip-flopping, it's weakness. No, what it is an expression of the democratic process. You've listened to the public, they're not happy, so now you're taking action. You're reviewing your initial position. That's a good thing. What is not a good thing, and what makes this whole thing a farce, is the fact that, yes, it was mentioned in Parliament too, so we know there's been a real backlash. There's been a letter written to the police by the MP of Chorley, said there will be an investigation. However, why have they already downgraded him from an A-star class official to an A-class official? If you want him to present his evidence, you have to listen to his evidence. If there's no suitable explanation, you then take action. How can you call a guy up to present you evidence and you've punished him before you've seen his evidence? It shows that they have no real understanding, in my humble opinion, of what the problem is. They have no real understanding of how to rectify the situation, and they're merely having a reflexive response to the criticism. This is shocking from Robert Smith and the British Board of Boxing Control. Let me know where you stand on this. Moving on from that, let's talk about Anthony Joshua. Everybody knows I love a little bit of a psychological deep dive, and he's gone on a bit of a Twitter rant. First and foremost, somebody put out a tweet about Tyson Fury, mocking him, saying that he's always claiming to be the best to ever do it, and yet has a resume of Chisora, an injured Klitschko. Obviously, that's a bit of a loaded tweet there. An injured Klitschko, Varleen and Wilder 3 times, and he's got a bunch of people laughing in the GIF. And Anthony Joshua has retweeted that to say he's the best to ever do it. I can't disagree. He's obviously being sarcastic here, mocking Tyson Fury's willingness to fight anyone and everyone, particularly as Fury has been saying he'll retire after the Dillian Whyte fight. But it doesn't end there. Somebody else tweeted to defend Anthony Joshua in a Twitter exchange where he copied in a tweet from Deontay Wilder, because people have been accusing AJ of ducking. They've been saying he doesn't want to fight the best. They've been saying he even wants to duck Joe JOYCE, potentially even Otto Varleen in the meantime. And somebody put out a tweet of Deontay Wilder's from back in November 2020 where he's messaging Tyson Fury and he says, when that fight was a draw, I told you that I would give you a rematch. You know I was offered more money to fight Joshua than I was getting to fight you. Again, being a man of my word, I fought you like I said I would. Now, obviously, AJ pounced on this because in the past, Deontay Wilder was saying that he wasn't going to fight Anthony Joshua because the money wasn't right. And yet here he's saying he would have been offered more to fight AJ than he was to fight Fury for the second fight. And AJ says, need I say more? Let's put this AJ Duck saga to rest. I respect Wilder. He's a good fighter. He just wasn't ready to fight me. If you don't believe me, see below. So he's getting into his bit of a lawyer mode there because clearly he has been wound up by all these calls that he's somehow ducking. He was asked about Otto Varleen and Dmitry Bible saying he could be a potential opponent, and Anthony Joshua said, LOL, okay, I've shared the ring with most people you see in the heavyweight division today. I boxed Otto Varleen twice as youngsters, and I boxed Joe JOYCE and stopped him in 1 round. I'd do the same thing today. Ain't nothing changed. In a separate tweet, he wrote, rolls eyes, you really think that I wouldn't fight Joe JOYCE? And he's copied him in. He's tagged Joe JOYCE in. I love this. This is showing that war mentality. He's trying to be the alpha male in there. And the confidence does seem to be returning to Anthony Joshua, in my humble opinion. A lot of people are going to say, oh, it's a front, it's a front. But the same people that are saying he's ducking these guys, a tricky southpaw in Varleen, or Joe JOYCE. Joe JOYCE would beat Anthony Joshua. I remember when a lot of people were talking about the Whyte fight for Tyson Fury as potentially falling through, a lot of Fury fans were saying, well, Joe JOYCE is better than Whyte anyway. So if Anthony Joshua is willing to fight Joe Joyce, as he's showing here, if he does go ahead with it and he wins, you've got to give him his props. You've got to say this is a big risk fight without a belt on the line. You've got to give him credit for that. But he seems to be willing to take that fight. He seems to be willing to fight Wladimir. And has it ever really been in doubt? In my humble opinion, it's never been in doubt. And we'll get to that in a moment. But there have also been questions about his career and the trajectory his career has taken. Some people feel that he didn't have a deep enough amateur career. I don't personally feel that. But other people felt that he was rushed during his pro career. Well, Anthony Joshua doesn't necessarily feel that either. What Anthony Joshua does admit to, however, is inactivity potentially affecting him. Somebody said it would be lovely if you'd fight more than once a year and might actually help your career too. And he said, agreed, winning the heavyweight championships in my 16th fight was a gift and a curse. It stopped my progression as an active fighter. Obviously, when you're a world champion, you can't be fighting once every couple of months when you're a pay-per-view star. They need to be able to build up the particular fight, right? They need to build it up, so it requires time. So he's basically bemoaning that. So that's interesting there. Anthony Joshua might feel that he's a fighter that needs to stay active and hasn't been afforded that opportunity. Well, moving on from that, he's also asked something else that a lot of people discuss. I myself have discussed this. This guy asks him, in my opinion, you ain't been the same since the Ruiz lost. It just looks like you're more cautious now and don't want to attack fighters like you used to. And he said, I wanted to be a slick boxer. Boxing 101, hit and don't get hit. I was told if I love fighting and want to go on for years, try not to get hit a lot. A loss shouldn't make you scared of boxing. It made me work on my weakness. Hard to explain, but make of it what you can. So what he's saying here, it goes back to that discussion that I've spoken about before on this channel. Is it a question of wanting to hone your existing skills, to be a specialist in one method, or is it better to want to develop new wrinkles to your game so that you're able not only to improve as a fighter holistically, but to add new wrinkles to make you more adaptable? Now, the downside of that potentially is that you become a jack of all trades and a specialist in none. Right, so it's really one of those things whereby it's debatable about the best approach to take. But Anthony Joshua here is explaining why he has gone down the route of moving away from the fighting like the big man to taking on what a lot of people feel is the influence of Angel Fernandez, to become more fluid, to become more of a boxer. Let me know what you think about that and his decision on that. But what it does do is it shows a confidence in his decision making. A lot of people have questioned whether he is a confident guy, whether he's confused. Well, does it really suggest that he's confused? We'll get to that in a moment. One of the other things, though, that I like about him lately on his Twitter rants is that he said always respect our elders, and he copied in a piece where he was discussing this in an interview with Matchroom, and somebody said you didn't respect Jermell Miller's mum, though, and Jermell Miller obviously had insulted Anthony Joshua's mum, and AJ started to flirt with Jermell Miller's mum openly at a press conference, right? One of the more entertaining press conferences involving Anthony Joshua. It showed his character. It showed a bit more of an entertaining element to AJ rather than always trying to be the perfect sort of role model, which is a nice thing to have, right? It's a good thing to be. He shouldn't try to be something he's not. And he does come across genuinely as that nice sort of guy. But it's nice to see him clap back as the heavyweight champion of the world. And here he said, true, well, not always, but you try your best. In other words, to respect your elders. So he's doubling down on why he did that, right? He's having a bit of a laugh and another little poke at Jermell Miller. So to me, it seems that he's in a good place mentally. I find it funny, hilarious, to be honest with you, that so many people seem to be referring to this guy as a fraud. You're talking about an Olympic gold medalist, a former unified heavyweight champion that has one unavenged defeat. He's willing to try and rectify that. Lennox Lewis had a couple of unavenged defeats too, and he sorted those out. So I find it funny that boxing fans seem to want to target this man and make out like he's a fraud. It's shocking to me. You've got to praise this guy. Like you have to do his rivals. Tyson Fury deserves a lot of praise. Alexander Usyk does too. We're in a very stacked heavyweight division. So why undermine these guys and Deontay Wilder and all the other guys? They're out there and they're doing their thing and they're top level fighters. You can't call Anthony Joshua a fraud. And like I said, he seems to be in a good place right now. You can see him here playing football, tennis, where he looks absolutely shocking. Look at that. But it shows he's willing to be self-deprecating, laugh at himself, willing to upload it onto Instagram and have a bit of a laugh with everybody. I'm sure there's also a method to this madness. It's working on coordination, on balance, being able to shift your feet, even though he's just having a little bit of fun. But the point is, despite being willing to have a bit of fun, He's also showing that willingness to clap back. He's showing that willingness to challenge everybody. I will fight Joe Joyce and I will do it again. Nothing's changed. I'll stop Joe Joyce in 1 round. What a thing to say when everybody's talking about what a dangerous guy Joe Joyce is and how he's a significant threat to all the top guys. AJ's ready mentally. And I like that, because in the past, there has been that element of, I guess you could say, confusion. But what is less confused? What can be less confused about saying, you know what, I've seen the best trainers in the world, I've traveled around the United States, and Angel Fernandez is the guy I want to go with here. Unpopular it may be, I may get criticism, but I'm with this guy in training camp. I know this guy's knowledge. I believe in him. I believe what he can turn me into. And whether he's right or wrong to take that decision, time will tell. But what it is showing to me is that Anthony Joshua is starting to have real faith in his ability again and real faith in his decision-making process. Let me know what you think about all this. Perhaps you see it completely differently. Maybe you see this as a meltdown. Who knows? Let me know what you think. Moving on from Anthony Joshua, a very concerning development has occurred, in my humble opinion, which is completely unacceptable. Wladimir Klitschko, I understand he's in a conflict with his nation at the moment and another nation. I'm going to be very careful not to trigger algorithms right now, because this is the world we live in at the moment, where you can't say anything without somehow there being a consequence to it. You can't engage in free speech anymore, it seems. But he's involved in a conflict. You guys know the nations that are involved. We'll call his nation number 1 and the opposing nation number 2. And he basically says that fighters, athletes, all sportsmen from nation number 2 should be banned from the sport. This, to me, is a horrific approach to take. Dmitry Bible, the man in question, the man who he has called not to be allowed to fight Canelo Alvarez, has said, of course this has affected me, because I have a lot of friends in nation number 1. I have a lot of friends and relatives in nation number 2. The only thing I wish is for everything to go back to normal and everybody to be in peace. Does this sound like a guy that deserves to be punished for the conflicts of 2 nations? This idea of bringing cancel culture because of an international conflict. You know, Richard Dwyer did a fantastic video on this that I strongly suggest you watch. I recommend you watch it. But the point is here, Vitali Klitschko, the brother of Wladimir Klitschko, has been photographed with some very, very questionable characters, people with extreme positions and extreme political positions. You need to check these photos out. I can't put them here. Like I said, you could get your channel banned, right? On Twitter, I've put them up. You can go and see this. Had Vitali Klitschko been in the Western world, had a politician done something like this, had a Western actor or athlete or whoever been photographed with these people, the level of cancel culture you would have seen, this person never would have been able to show their face again. Would Wladimir Klitschko like that same level of treatment to his brother? Now, I understand it's a very complex conflict, and the fact of the matter is most people had no idea who the actors involved even were. They'd never heard of them up until 3 weeks ago. And suddenly, because people watch the mainstream news, they think they're experts on the situation. This is a very complex conflict with some complex affiliations. So I'm not pretending this is a simple thing. But the fact of the matter is, you're sitting there and you want to basically attack a guy for his nationality and ethnicity. Now, let me just remind you that there was quite a dark chapter in American history, whereby when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, there were about 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry living in the United States. And they were, 2/3 of them were full citizens of the United States. And following that attack, the public narrative led to such a wave of anti-Japanese suspicion that the Roosevelt administration decided to incarcerate the Japanese community in America. These are the sort of stepping stones that occur when atrocities are then carried out against people of a specific race or nationality. The Nazis did the same thing in Berlin in the 1930s, and you had Kristallnacht that followed, and so on and so forth. This needs to stop. There is no excuse for this. Dmitry Bible is an innocent man. He's done nothing wrong. He's an athlete that lives in the United States. It has nothing to do with him, this conflict. He wants peace like 99% of the rest of the world. This needs to stop. What we should have seen is people coming out and speaking up against this. But instead, we're seeing this escalate further and further, which is a real concern, because you're now also seeing private citizens having their assets frozen or seized by states in the West. Have we not had our own questionable wars where we acted, and by we I mean the West, the United States, the UK, where we've acted unilaterally, being condemned by the United Nations? Have we not had that? Could you imagine back when that happened? You had Floyd Mayweather and David Beckham and so on and so forth, and not being allowed to compete in their professional sports. Could you imagine your assets being frozen as a result? This is ludicrous, man. It's giving powers to the state that they should not have. And people need to speak up against this, because they might not be coming for you today, but they could be coming for you tomorrow. These are innocent private citizens. And I hope we do get to see Canelo Alvarez fight Dmitry Bible in what would be a terrific fight. Moving on from that, Charlo went off on one at Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford argued that if he can't get the Spence fight, he might have to move up to light middleweight and take the titles there. And Jermell Charlo did not take too kindly to that. He went off on one, started saying Terence Crawford's got problems in his own weight category. He needs to accept a lower offer and be a challenger for once and fight a guy like Errol Spence, fight a guy like Keith Thurman. Stop worrying about him, because he's a knockout artist. And if he walks up, he's getting knocked the F out. Now, a lot of people have interpreted this differently. You've had some people criticize Charlo and say this is essentially a duck. Instead of him welcoming Terence Crawford to his weight category, knowing that this is a big name and a big fight, instead he's trying to put obstacles in the way and saying, why don't you fight other guys first, right? Other people are interpreting it as, no, it's not that. He's just sitting there making threats. He's always angry. He's angry with the world, as Jermell. And this is his way of saying, listen, you should be focusing on other guys, because if you come and fight me, you're going to get seriously hurt. To be honest with you, that's how I interpreted it. I didn't interpret any fear here in Charlo. I didn't interpret any ducking or anything like that. But let me know what you think about that and how you interpret that. Moving on from that, Jeff Mayweather gave an interview with the Boxing Voice, and he was basically saying that he felt, he was essentially confirming that Tank Davis, in some regards, was ducking, I guess you could use that term. He didn't use the term, but you could explain it as ducking Gary Russell. Because what he said was, why would Tank fight a guy like Gary Russell, who is a big risk for a minimal reward? You might as well continue to fight other guys, because you're a big pay-per-view star. You're going to continue to get the pay packet that you're getting, regardless of whether you're fighting guys like Barrios or Isaac Cruz. You're still getting that big pay packet. If you're going to then take a bigger risk to fight a guy like Gary Russell, you have to then be paid for that risk, because Gary Russell's a terrific fighter, but he doesn't bring the green. Now, obviously, Jeff Mayweather is talking here about the mindset of Team Mayweather, his nephew Floyd, and the handlers of Gervonta Davis. Well, they're clearly telling you this is a risk versus reward factor, and we're not willing to take on that risk. You have to understand, Gary Russell for a long time was a champion here. Gary Russell wasn't just some up-and-coming prospect and there's a risk versus reward factor. This isn't talking about a guy who is a final eliminator and you can go down another route for a world title, which has got more money and is an easier touch, so you're going to take that route. No. This is about trying to get a belt in a fight that a lot of people would have loved to have seen in the United States, and it would have been a legacy fight too. So when you're talking about money in this regard, quite clearly, a lot of boxing fans are going to see this as a duck. And this is Jeff Mayweather talking about this. Let me know what you're thinking here. Let me know what your position is. Do you think this is a duck? Let me know on everything that we've discussed today what your positions are. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care and God bless.